colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
I am filled with the ache and the determination and the solidarity that this hymn puts voice and music to. I'm grateful to our fantastic director of music, Rick Fortner, who illuminated to me, oh yes, let's just, thank you, Rick, who illuminated to me a history perhaps many of you know, where the lyrics of this song originated from. The lyrics for Singing for Our Lives, or Gentle Angry People, were written by Holly Near in response to the assassination of Harvey Milk in the winter of 1978. When Harvey Milk, the first openly gay elected California's history official, was assassinated in a hate crime, community members and organizers gathered en masse in San Francisco, their minds unable to digest, their hearts hurting, and instinctively people came together. Tori Osborne, in a PBS interview, shared that she drove with Holly to San Francisco. And she said, quote, "I'm driving and I suddenly hear this guttural noise. It was primal sound coming from Holly, and she starts humming, and she hums it, and she hums, and then she starts singing, and by the time we get to San Francisco, she's written 2 verses. This year, I have been intrigued with somatic experiencing, a form of therapy which addresses post-traumatic stress through a patient's bodily experiences and sensations instead of solely on CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is more talk therapy. SE, somatic experiencing, is an interesting tool. I mean, I personally dig it because it is what I have found through trial and error in my own healing, again and again, of the traumas I've experienced in my life. And before this perks your excitement and curiosity to my stories and the sagas of my life, I just want to start off on a great foundation. Y'all, we all traumatized. You can't not be if you are living in a country where human personhood through slavery and deliberate genocide and the refugees in terror are the foundation. You can't not be, while in this world, so many identities and ways of being in this world are marginalized and idolized, shoving us out of interbeing and the possibility available only when we are whole and becoming when we are human. You can't not be, fam. So what is it for you? Is it when your family's toxic patterns repeat or your ancestors pop up in numbness or pain? Or when the narrative that you are not enough or not worthy, not deserving, gets you so in a vortex of pain, you don't know which way is up or right or left or okay or here? And I'm wary of superlatives like always and never, but I feel pretty certain that this fog of forgetting has happened to each of us. And when we are triggered, when we are pulled out of our right mind and into a chaotic whirlwind of confusion and stress, it sort of feels like someone's taken over. Something else has taken over our emotions and our mind and our ideas, right? Like, can I Some empathy, like a nod would be helpful. Thank you. I know I'm not alone. Don't even play. It's the hormonal cocktail roller coaster that I felt when I was a teenager, and guess what? It keeps coming back. Again and again and again, and I wonder, do y'all remember feeling so overwhelmed with feelings of irritation that you went numb or into autopilot? Or like you couldn't even pick a reaction except just to survive? These are full-on emotional kidnapping experiences that Daniel Goleman called the amygdala hijack. So let's get into this. An amygdala hijack is a person's emotional response that is immediate, overwhelming, and out of measure with the actual stimulus, because it has triggered a much more significant emotional threat. In short, it's the scientific explanation of the saying, if it's hysterical, it's historical. I'll say that again. If it's hysterical, it's historical. And maybe you're thinking, thanks, Yadenee, for all those fancy words, but what does it mean? I've got a handy, well, actually, I don't. Dan Siegel has a handy analogy that makes this more real. So everyone, if you're able, please get your hand out, one of them. Pick one, fantastic. And for the purpose of this sermon, I'd like you to put your thumb on the inside and close your hand into a fist. Lovely. For this sermon, this is your brain. This is as the basic setup of your brain. And here is your spinal cord going up your body. Wow, thank you so much, nervous system, right into the reptilian brain. Y'all remember that? This is like your wrist. And that is basic survival. That's breathing, that's sleeping, that's breathing while you're sleeping. Important stuff. And then here, the palm of your hand and your thumb, that is the mammalian brain. That's where the amygdala and the hippocampus are. It's where new memories are made, where emotions are regulated, and processed. And it's also where learning happens. And this is like the limbic system, and it has been called the mammalian brain. So it's kind of like evolutionary, a little step up, but not, better, just different, right? It's the next step in survival, and it's about relationship, connection, tactile, the earth, connecting, right? And last, your 4 fingers, this is your prefrontal cortex. It is the latest thing in evolutionary brains. It's where we rationalize and we moderate our social behavior and we plan complex cognitive behaviors. This part keeps growing into your mid-20s. Be careful, you need it all. It's our means to articulating philosophy, to create complex tools, and it's both how we imagine and get to outer space. It's the part of our brains which keep developing. Yes, exciting. So Dan Siegel calls the amygdala hijack we described earlier, flipping your lid, because your prefrontal cortex, nowhere to be found. It is when a sensory experience is so intense, you are moved solely into the one agenda of survival with your mammalian and reptilian brain. And we have been taken over with the prefrontal cortex, unable to be engaged. Flipping your lid, the amygdala hijack, feels like static in your ears, like everyone is out to get us, feels like nothing is okay, your chest is tight, your breathing is shallow, if you're breathing at all. It's those very real moments when the world, all you can imagine it as is a dumpster fire, right? And you feel like fighting or screaming or running or crying or disappearing and just anything to end the torture of existing. Somatic experiencing wisdom is to work with this system instead of trying to deny it or skip over it. Not to mask the pain or the reaction, but to move the energy evolutionarily along and simultaneously use the very parts that are triggered to heal and to learn a new way of processing the experience. When we are in our reptilian and mammalian brains, we need to use those strengths and skills to create a new balance. When we have flipped our lid, it is not the time to strategize. It's not the time to rationalize or try to minimize what's going on, because somatic experiencing teaches to reach wholeness again, we have to get there evolutionarily. We must use the skills of feeling and location and connection, relationships, to address the trauma-trapped energy in our bodies by moving through the body. And that means shaking and rocking and groaning and moaning and more. And when I say wholeness, to return to wholeness, that's not the prefrontal cortex. That's an integrated mind body. Prefrontal cortex is just one of many pieces. Being in an amygdala hijack isn't inherently wrong or bad. It isn't whole, but it isn't wrong or bad. It is what is, and we need to accept that and meet each part and our functions of our brain with curiosity and compassion to invite them into healing and harmony with one another. So, the shaking and the rocking and the groaning is actually necessary. And that surprised me because it reminds me of my Pentecostal days. And I think back in the Christian tradition, and it's in Pentecostalism, it's also in Quakers. They literally quaked. It's also beyond Christian traditions. It's in shamanic rituals and Hindu chanting and various other religious traditions that have fiercely embodied group rituals, which are described as healing and transformative, because they are. I left the Pentecostal tradition I was raised in years ago, and I find now in reflection, they were onto something that is real and powerful, and to dismiss it or to ignore the sacred space of healing that we have access to is a kind of a crime. I was wary of that space, that vulnerability, because that is the site where I was also wounded. It was where I was told I wasn't whole, but that I had to work to earn my space on earth. However, our fullest embodiment, that vulnerable space, that feeling, sensing space, while it is the very site of wounding, it's also the posture of healing and true restoration. Animals do this in the wild. I actually saw a video, going off notes, I saw a video where a polar bear was tranquilized. Sorry, that was okay. It was tranquilized, and then the scientists who are with it, stayed with the polar bear to make sure it went through this recovery process to return back to its body. If an animal in the wild does not go through, it shakes because of the trauma of what just happened, and then it takes deep breaths, and then it has returned back. Its brain has become integrated again, and it can go back and listen to its instincts and survive in the wild. And if it doesn't do that, they have to take the animal into a shelter because it won't survive in the wild. Y'all, we walking around unwhole and dislocated, and I want to be more like a polar bear. How do we do it? Thich Nhat Hanh once told, I think, a way that we can do it through a classic story of Buddha and Mara and Ananda. So the Buddha is described as the enlightenment itself, and Mara is illusion itself, and Ananda is like us in the story. And for my theological framework, I like to think of the Buddha as remembering, when I remember whose I am, why I am, and Mara as forgetting, when I forget my wholeness, my isness. And Ananda is like my prefrontal cortex. It's doing its best. So in this story, it's more fun just to tell it. So in this story, Ananda is a devoted disciple of the Buddha and loves caring for the Buddha, doing whatever the Buddha wants, you know what I'm saying? And then Ananda is staying at the doorway of a cave because the Buddha is meditating, doing classic Buddha things. And Mara comes up, and Ananda's not impressed. Mara asks to see Buddha, and Ananda's like, absolutely not. That is inappropriate. You are Mara itself. I think the Buddha's like super busy being enlightened. Mara is witty, because illusion is witty, and says, actually, the Buddha is the Buddha because the Buddha is welcoming. So if I want to see the Buddha, I have to. And Ananda's like, dang it, you got me. It's like, fine. So goes in, tells the Buddha, Mara's here. Ugh. And the Buddha's like, oh, wow, welcome Mara in, come on in. Actually, Ananda, can you make us tea? And Ananda's it's like such a conflict, because to make tea for the Buddha, absolutely, all day, every day. That's why I meditate. But for Mara, less exciting, but does it out of devotion. And once Ananda serves the Buddha the tea takes the tea and gives it to Mara and sits close to Mara and says, how are you, my dear? What's on your heart? Mic drop. That's wild. That's a whole nother way of existing in the world with the things that we are terrified of. The story is radical in so many ways, and it reminds me of my own journey, at least the first part of my mental health. Mara, this monster of disgust and fear and anxiety and terror in me, was my depression and my suffocating social anxiety. And it was a full-time job to try to keep it out. I felt I could hear it knocking and then pounding, and then it was trying to tear down and bust the doorway of my mind and my heart. And I tried with all my might, y'all, to keep that ugly, that scary, dangerous out. I ignored it and distracted myself and others from it, and I tried to hope it away. And at 17, I found myself exhausted for this 24/7 shift at the door, using my body as leverage to try to keep the crazy out. And then it was too much. The door fell away, and I braced myself for what was coming. And I found that the evil unleashed that I was trying to keep out, I was actually keeping deeper in. The door wasn't to the outside, it was to a closet deep in my heart. I was trapping something inside of myself, which wanted to express. I also learned the thing that I was trapping wasn't pure evil. It wasn't pure hate and judgment and sadism. When I offered it tea and I sat with it, and I found that the thing I was villainizing was a hurt and screaming 6-year-old Yadenee. Other times, it was a fevered, raging 13-year-old Yadenee. And there are others. But they had points to their pain. Their delivery, not great. But they really, truly were bringing a kernel of truth. And I think that's what illusion is a kernel of truth that's corrupted by bad solutions. From the Buddhist version of this story, I learned also how real it is that we very naturally, in our prefrontal cortex, are not keen on the vulnerability swirl that is when we let Mara in with Buddha. And from my experience, I learned that trying to stay pure, that is the illusion, fam, because our choice is in engaging the guest. Mara is already here. We can engage it, or we continue to numb our liberation muscles when we focus on ignoring it instead of addressing it. It's the very practice of compassion and bearing witness to the multiplicity. And this requires we surrender judgment statements and strengthen our skills in getting out of the way so energy can make its way through. That's when integration and healing can happen again and again and again. And it's the magic Holly Near did to write the hymn we sang earlier. She let a primal and guttural chaos she felt have a voice and moved the energy through harmony, relationship with others and herself to tune in to a rhythmic, repeating, and soothingly found words, and integrated her mind and body and could share this with others so that we could heal as well. I have a belief that helps me dearly in getting back into this sweet spot of letting Mara in, which is not very exciting sometimes. It is this: Hurt's one agenda is to heal. Hurt's one agenda is to heal. And the first step to healing is acknowledgement. So pain is really trying to just get my attention to a source. Iyanla Vanzant describes pain as an acronym for pay attention inwardly now. What if we let stress in a system, anxiety in a relationship, frustration in our life be greeted as a messenger instead of an assassin? If we don't villainize the evil of unwholeness and instead listen curiously, not to the crappy ideas it spews, but the problems it's trying to address, we may find even the most cruel voices in our heads are attempting to heal, attempting to prevent the pain of not belonging or not mattering or not being connected, or attempting to preserve purity, which has falsely equated worth in our society and now in our minds. And all of these less than eloquent amygdala hijack ideas are now an invitation to listen and look deeply. I invite y'all to engage yourselves when you've flipped your lid. Come at yourself with courageous hearts, with empathy and tea and deep listening, and it is the art of not feeding, but actually healing the terror inside of us. You're trying to heal, and healing, while it is rarely cute, need not be cruel. We can orient ourselves with anchors like a tarot deck, or spiritual relationships with Jesus, Mohammed, Krishna, Buddha, the earth, songs, and instruments, mantra. And we can use our focus on beauty to move our bodies in a sway and a rock and a quake and a shake and a dance as we soothe our bodies through movement. We can welcome the yuck and muck of illusions and allow them to be multiplicities, and allow them to be not wrong or right or good or bad, but simply be what is right now. And this is how we bring healing and wholeness to our bodies and lives. And the great invitation to overcome evil, as is our theme this month, is to build a lifestyle of healing, to decriminalize embodiment, because the same space where the trauma happened is where the trauma can be healed and released. To surrender this hyper use of our prefrontal cortex to try and prevent our pain when it may be the very barrier to our healing. And to not villainize or divinize any of these tools, but know that we, the shaper, the curator, have so much sacred power to discern, learn, and use them for healing and fuller justice, grander truth, and more whole beauty. Know that you are powerful. You are powerful. You are powerful. And in this world and in this mind, so full of pain and turmoil, you're not Ananda or Mara or the Buddha, but the collection of all three, sitting together over tea, working together for the sweet remembering of who you are. May it be so.
You're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
LOVEBB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256, or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed.
And be a blessing.